Okay. All right. Welcome back. Another session. We are very happy to hold another office hour session, which is dedicated for publishing to Apple Store. And we have Rahul with us again. As you all remember, the last session, not the last session, but before that one, Rahul guided us through Android publishing from Draftbit project. And we just left in, I think, the submission process, right, Rahul? Submission to Play Store.
Correct. So sorry, go ahead, Rumeysa.
I mean, are we going to talk about that process and then iOS publishing, or should we start with iOS publishing? I mean, Apple Store publishing. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking in order for people who are watching this as a continuation of the set of our first office hours, I'll just finish with the Android publishing. It shouldn't take me too long, and then we'll begin the iOS publishing, which would be again from scratch, and we'll reuse the same app that I've just built.
Okay, great. So
Okay.
just for your information, for attendees, this session is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube, our YouTube channel. And please feel free to ask your questions. You can raise your hands during the session and ask your questions by yourself. So let's make this session more interactive and helpful for anyone. Great. So let's get started.
Perfect. So, Rumeysa, since I'll be sharing my screen, I won't be able to see questions or anything else. So do let me know.
I
I
will
can
guide
stop
you.
and answer.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think my screen should be visible again. And I'm basically carrying on from where we left off last time, which was basically publishing the Android app. We did the setup, just a very, very small summary of what we did last time. So we did the Android setup. So we had this publish button and we published a build, which takes around 20 to 30 minutes. And then once the build is published, and because this is the first time we are publishing, we would need to submit the build manually. So I'll show you that process. And then once that process is basically complete, I'll also show you how to basically go to, or actually just show it to you right now. Once you have manually submitted your build once, you can go to your Google Play setup right this, and then the second step right here, which says what kind of build, you want to move it to build and submit and save. So now the next time you hit the publish button, what we will do, and there's a caveat to this, but I'll tell you the normal flow and then we'll tell you about what can also happen is if your build that directly goes to the build process, we will submit that build automatically and it will show up on your Google Play console account. Excuse me. But it would be in a draft state in your Google Play console account. So you would need to release that manually. That would still be a manual step there where you actually release that build to your internal testers. Now, that's the happy case. But there are certain times when Expo is extremely busy publishing other apps. Your Android build, if you're on a free account on Expo, can go to a queue. If your build goes into a queue, the auto submission does not happen. In that case, what you would need to do is you would need to take your build from your Expo account, and I'll show it to you just now how that happens, and then submit that manually. So in case you hit the publish button and you receive like either an Android publishing failure message right after hitting the build within a few minutes, that usually means that, again, it's not the best error messaging, but that usually means that your build is in a queue instead of directly publishing. I hope that clears everything out. And if you do have more questions about it, I'm happy to answer those. So as I said before, we have already published it and it says published 1 hour ago. So my Android build should be available on my Expo account. Right, I go here, think I need to sign out of this. And let's stop sharing for a moment. Start sharing back in again. I just wanted to be sure I'm in the right account. Now, I'm showing you the Draftbit view, so I'm going to be going to my personal account where this build was submitted. So I can go to my name, my account, and right here you see this is the project I was publishing from. And this is another good thing to know, that if you go back to Android and when you're publishing your app for the first time or any time as a matter of fact, you should go to your settings, go to advanced, and then select a slug name. Now you notice over here it says untitled app, but in my project it's saying Android/publishing. This is happening because if there's an absence of a slug name, it will try to take your app name and then add a hyphen in between and make that as your slug. This is important because you want to make sure that you have a slug name already entered here, because if you change your slug name, that can create a different project in your Expo account, which can lead to a whole lot of problems about key stores. So anyone who's starting this process, make sure you enter your slug name here before you do the publishing. So because I already have this, I'm just going to rename it here and save it. Although it's not going to affect my current process, but this is a best practice that we recommend. So now I'm here. I'll go to my project called Android Publishing. And in this, oh, it looks like the build is still going on. So
By the way, we have a question from Mohan. Mohan, you can ask your questions by yourself if you like, or I can ask on your behalf. He's asking, what is the scheme name?
okay, great question. So scheme name is basically your app scheme. If you're to advance, so this is what dictates what your deep links would look like. So for instance, if I say like test/app, now this becomes my scheme name. And now if you want to implement deep linking in your application, you would select the screen here, go to the data panel, and you'll see this option called deep linking. So we switch this deep linking on, and now you can see my exported app scheme name becomes test/app and then the name of the screen. So yes, scheme name is also important if you're doing deep linking in your application. That basically gives you this initial, I wouldn't really want to say this URL, but this initial um, scheme for your app. And so this would only be useful in a published app. And if you're testing deep linking via our Draftbit Live Review app, you can use this scheme name. And again, deep linking won't work inside in the builder, but it would work on the Draftbit Live Review app. So if you scan this QR code and then use the Draftbit Live Review app, not the Expo Pro app, you should be able to open that screen using Draftbit and the name of the screen. And deep linking is not switched on by default, so you need to switch it on in order to deep link to a screen. I hope that answers it.
He asks, does deep link work in web app now?
Deep link doesn't work in a web app by default yet. Is this Mohan Ramanujan?
Yes.
Oh, hey Mohan, how are you doing? It's been a very long time since we last spoke. Sorry, I can't see the chat, so I'm not 100% sure who I'm talking to, but good to see you, and I hope things are well. And yes, so deep linking right now is not supported by default, but you can do deep linking by generating a linking configuration file and hosting it by self-hosting your web PWA on services like Netlify or anything else that offers the ability to do deep linking. We do know that it works on Netlify because we have tested it and we have a few apps which work flawlessly on Netlify with deep linking. And hope that answers that one. And my build is also complete, so I can basically continue doing this. So now I'm here. You can see now this is converted into download, and I've just downloaded the app. It's in my downloads folder. Now I can open my Google console account here. So this is the Google Play console. I'm just going to switch to my personal account. Okay, so this is where we left off the last time we were here. This is the home page of your Google Play console account, and this is the apps that I have on this account. And I think the last one we did was this one, the demo app. So I'll open this app, or actually, why don't we just create a new app just so that if people have missed this step. So we'll create a new app. I'll say live Android publishing. The language would be English. It would be an app, free, and then check these boxes. Clicking on create an app. So we have just created our first app, and there's a whole list of new steps that you need to do now when you're doing your release for the first time. And all of those steps are basically listed here on your dashboard itself, and you can follow those steps along in order to do the publishing. So I'll go to internal testing, and then I will create a new release. This is what you'll do the first time you're releasing a new app on Google. And now on this page, the first step, this is something that Google basically introduced pretty recently. Is basically choosing a sign-in key. So I can click on choose a sign-in key, and we'll use the Google generated one. It's working on it. So we have that. And now, because again, this is our first time we're submitting it, we need to do a manual upload. So I'll click on this upload folder, go to my downloads, and select the .aab file. Click on open. Take around 30 seconds for this to upload. And just as a suggestion to folks who are using RevenueCat, RevenueCat is basically offers you in-app purchasing in your accounts, in-app purchases or in-app subscriptions that cannot be tested in internal testing. You need to release it in the closed testing area. And when you're releasing apps in closed testing or open testing, it goes through a review process on the store, which can be done within a few minutes to, I think Google says 48 hours, and only then it can be released to your closed testing group or the open testing group. Internal testing doesn't have a review process. So now, as you can see, the app got uploaded, the release name, it auto kind of picks up the version number. If you want to change it, you can change it here. If you want to add release notes, so what this version of your app does, you can add that here, or you can leave it default. And then I can click on next. and I'm here. You'll see warnings here. So the first warning is this release will not be available to any users as we haven't specified any testers. That's fine. There's no um, I'm gonna murder the pronunciation here. Uh, Deobfuscation file. That's fine. You don't really have to worry about it. I usually ignore it. If you want to generate one, you can load more here. And I can just click on save. So I've basically released my first Android version as an internal testing release. And right now this build is out, but no one can really test it. So the second step here would be adding testers. I'll go to my testing area. The first thing you want to do is create an email list. So you can have separate lists for different set of testers. So let's create an email list. You want to give it a list name. I'll say internal testers and then add email addresses here. So only people who are on this list would have the ability to install this. So I can say Rahul at draftbit.com. So also make sure this should be your Google Play account email, the one that you sign in on your phones with. So I've just added this. I can add others if I wanted to be. It could be a comma separated list, but for now I'll just leave it to myself. Then save changes, click on create. So I've just created an internal list, and now I can copy this testing link and click on save here. Don't forget to click save because otherwise this link wouldn't be valid. Now I have a link, and if you guys want to just see how it kind of works, I can open this link here. It will ask me to go to the account that I've added in my list. So I've just switched to my Draftbit account, and now you can see it says accept invite. I can click on accept invite. Next thing would be install public version of this app. This is the page that you will see. Then you click on install. Google will ask you which device you want to install this on, and then I can just click on install, which is pretty cool. So once this step is complete, you'll see on your device that this app will get installed automatically. So yeah, that's basically everything for Android publishing and then submitting your app. Any questions that are there in the
Yeah,
comments or anybody else?
there isn't a question, but um, just for information, we have updated our documentation related to publishing to Google Play Store recently, and you can find all the related steps there. Maybe you can show it, Rahul.
Oh, sure. So you can go to docs.draftbit.com, and then on the left hand panel, you can scroll down, and then you can go to publishing your app, and then publishing your app to the Google Play Store. And just so you know, there was a lot of effort that was put in to update this document. So I would say please go ahead and use it and give us any feedback if you
Yes.
feel like we can do any more changes here to help you guys. It would be our pleasure to do it. Cool. Shall we move on to
Yes, to Apple Store, I guess. We don't
yes.
have any questions from attendees, so we can continue with Apple Store publishing.
Cool. So let me just get rid of all of these, and then you can either go to publish and go to the setup from here, or you can also do this from going to settings and then Apple App Store publishing. So Apple App Store publishing is, I wouldn't say slightly, but there's a big difference between the two, like the setup process and everything. So I'll try to showcase everything today, and hopefully that would help our users. And we'll try to take this as our guide in which, how do we do our steps? So the first thing that it's asking us here is do a bundle identifier. one good thing that I really like about Apple is basically you first create a bundle identifier, and then uh, Apple basically checks if that is available or not. And if it's available, it lets you use it. Otherwise, it will tell you right there that this bundle ID is not available. So to do Apple publishing, one thing that's required is the Apple developer account, which is a paid account, and it's $99 annually to maintain that account. So I'll be using the Draftbit account, and we'll start the new process. So go to developer.ios.com, and obviously it wants me to sign in. So I will go to my account. And so with Apple Publishing, there are two kinds of accounts on Apple. There's an individual account, and then there is a team account or an organization account. Most of the accounts, like you can do most of the things on um, both of the accounts. The only difference is if you invite someone on an individual account, they don't get access to your developer account. They will only be given access to your App Store account. If you're on organization accounts, you can basically invite people to your developer account as well. So the first step for Apple Publishing is basically signing up to this account, making sure that they have verified you. Once they have done the verification, only then you'll get access to all of these things. So first step here is you go to identifiers, you create an identifier. It's just going to be an app ID. Click on continue, then select app here, and then click on continue again. And over here, this is where you want to give your bundle ID. So I'll say com draftbit live publishing. And then in description, you can put in anything here. I'll say office hours live publish demo. And then I usually copy this because there's another place that I would want to use this, and I also want to use this here. Now, this is a crucial step that a lot of people miss out on, and if you miss this step, your Apple publications won't work. So, although, and this is true even if you are using push notifications or not, but you need to do this anyway, is go here and activate push notifications for this app. Once I've done given that capability, that's great. If you're using Apple login, you want to do this as well. And if you're using universal links, then you would want to do associated domains as well. I can leave that for now because we're not going to be doing those things. And click on continue. And then register. So I've just created my bundle ID. I can come in here and then just paste that bundle ID right here. So that's step number one. Step number two is basically going to be, go back here and come back to your home screen right here. We'll go to apps. You're going to see a bunch of Draftbit applications, but you can ignore those for now. We'll create a new app. And we would choose the platform. So when you're building a Draftbit, I would just select iOS. Give your app an app name. I can just say again, office hours. I think that should be enough. Select your primary language, which would be English US, your bundle ID. So you would go select the bundle ID that you created, which is right here, office hours live. And for us, what I usually do is just put my bundle ID as a SKU as well. And there's no requirement what this needs to be, but it's a required field. and then I'll leave it to full access. You can read about this here. You can limit which users see the app in the App Store if you want to do it limited access, or if you want to let anyone in the store see the app, you will do the full access. I'll click on create. So it looks like the app name you have entered already is being used, which is what I was telling you before. So office hours live demo probably wouldn't be used by anyone else. Click on create. That's fine. Usually you wouldn't see that message, so you can ignore it if you like. Okay, so now we have created the app and we are in this app. So just some basics here. This is the screen that you see when you're actually submitting the app live to the stores. Usually when you're doing your builds would be shown on TestFlight. So TestFlight is in the Android world, you can call this internal testing, in which once you publish your app to the App Store, it goes to TestFlight where you can release the app to your internal testers. They would test the app using, there's a TestFlight app that some of the phones have it pre-installed, or you can install it from the App Store. And that's the app that is basically being used by Apple for you to test your other Apple apps inside of it. And the way the apps function within TestFlight is, I would say, 99% identical on how they would function on the stores. If something is not working in TestFlight, it's definitely not going to be working in your published app. Otherwise, if everything works in TestFlight, you should be expecting that the app would function the same way in the real app world as well. So
I
right now,
have a question. I'm sorry,
sure.
it's not about TestFlight, but can you go to the App Store tab once more? There is
Sure.
here, it requires us to upload iOS previews and screenshots. So some of our users, a little bit confused about it. Is there any tools that we can use to take those screenshots? Any
Right.
recommendations?
Sure. So usually what the best process here would be either you can use the TestFlight app itself to actually see your app and then take a screenshot from this application. It wouldn't be in this proper dimension that they expect it to be, but you can then edit that to fit this dimension. And there are tools available like App Mockup, and I'm sure there are other tools as well. If you do a Google search, you would be able to see it. Let me see if I can find something like that. App Mockup. Yeah, there you go. So this is a tool that we have used in the past. It basically gives you ability to use the existing templates. So you can use this and add the screenshot that you just created as an inlay on the screen, or use one of these fancy ones as well. And that would be my recommendation. Again, people would have used other things, but I've seen some very nice screenshots that this lets you create.
Oh, that's cool.
Cool. Going back here, and thanks for bringing me back here, because there's one more thing that some people don't realize is when you're in TestFlight, you will see different versions, say version 1.10, 1.11, 12, 13. Those are all internal versions. But when you release the app to the App Store, it will ask you for what version number you want your app to be. So you can, even in TestFlight, if it says your app version is version 100, you can still release it as version 1.10 or 1.0 in on the real store. Okay, so basically carrying on. So we have this. The second step is App Store App ID. You can come here on this page, go to App Information, and copy the Apple ID. So this is your app ID. Go in here, and then paste it. iOS build type, you can leave it as default. This doesn't really matter here. But yeah, build or publish should be good. Custom should be avoided because it won't automatically start your build. Then let's go to the next step, or more important step here is basically to connect private key. So what does this key do? It gives Draftbit or whoever holds this key access to your app store account to send an update there. So this is again a required step. So let's generate a private key. We go to App Store. We would go to Users and Access. You would go to Keys. It says App Store Connect Key, and then create a new key. I would call this Office Hours Key again. Then depending on what kind of access that you want to give, you can give it key. Usually I think it needs to be at least a developer and above. I leave it to admin, and then I generate the key. And once I can find it, that would be nice. There we go. So this is the off hours key, and now you can see there's a download button here. So this is only a one-time download, so make sure once you download it, you keep the file at a safe location. Otherwise, you would need to create a new one and upload that again in Draftbit. So I'm downloading my API key, and then I would also copy the key ID. That's a field here in Draftbit. I'll put in my connect key ID, which is right here. I can now upload the key that I just downloaded. This is always going to be a .p8 file and auth key, and then it gives you your key right here as well, key ID, in case you want to find that out. So this is right here. And then one last step would be connect issuer key ID, which is available right here on the top, issuer ID. You can copy that and put this in here, and we are all set. Once I hit save, now just change the text to Apple Publishing, and then publish the app. Apple. Now you can see this button is now from setup, it's changed to publish. I can click publish. Okay, so the process has started. Now this also usually takes around 20 minutes for it to complete. And once it's done, you would see, you can go back to apps. And then find the app. Oh, I think this is not the app, right? Oh,
So are we able to see it immediately here?
Yeah, usually it's available. I think there might have been something. Uh, but yeah, usually in your case, you should be able to see the app right here. It's just way too many apps in this accounts. It might not be showing it to me right away. I hope this is helpful. Um, any questions about this?
There isn't any question yet, but I think Johnny has his own questions though. Please feel free to ask now.
Just 1 second, please.
Sure.
And Mohan says something here in the chat. The key you entered is the API key for Draftbit.
The key, yes. So that's the issuer key. That's going to be common for all your apps. And then there would be a key ID for the key that you generate. Those are two separate key IDs.
Okay. So also we have it's not, I think it's up to date, right? Our IS publishing documentation.
Yes, our iOS publishing doc is up to date because iOS hasn't made any recent changes like Google. So yeah, maybe if you want, I can share my screen again to show everyone, or we can just give a link. Bear with me, I'll just share my screen to show it to everyone.
Yes, that would be helpful, thanks. And also Mohan asks, does Apple provide alpha testing as part of internal testing or release app?
Not 100% sure what alpha testing here would be, but yes, so basically in Apple and TestFlight, you can divide it into groups. So you can have like a group that receives the update automatically as soon as you publish it. Oh, limited testing with public. Good question. So with limited tested with testing with public can be done via their external testers, right? And I can show you that. Actually, just bear with me. So let's just go to this app, and then we go to TestFlight, and you see there's internal testing. So there's basically two kinds of testing inside of Apple. There's internal testing and external testing. Internal testing means that the people need to be invited to your App Store account for them to be available as internal testers in your app. And obviously, you don't want to add everyone to your Apple developer account. To avoid that situation, you can do external testing. External testing, you create a group name. I can just say test group, create that group, and then you can choose a build that you want to share with them. So I'll share this build. You have to provide all of this information for Apple in order to release it. And if there's a username password, you would need to do that. So on here, I think it's a valid field. Let's see if it's good. Here, sign in is not required. I can click next. Now over here, you can just mention what needs to be tested. Test the app, then submit this for review. Yes, I need to put in a valid number.
Okay, we're not gonna call you, Rahul.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to in my head figure out how I would put this, but it could be 1 10 9 8 7 8 6 5 3 2 1. Would this work? Yeah, phone number should only contain numbers. I mean, if you enter a valid number, so if I do 91997, let's see if this is valid. Oh, it's not valid either. So I think it just needs a.
Mohan says try plus 91.
Yeah, it just said numbers here. Let's see. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Mohan. So we were basically able to add this build, and now you also get a public link once your app is being approved by the TestFlight beta testing yet. So this is an automated system, again, with Apple that can usually take between 0 to 48 hours is what they say in their docs. And once they internally review it, this build would be available to your testers. So you can either add testers here by just taking their email addresses, or it will give you a link here that can be shared with anyone externally. No, sorry, you would still need to add their email addresses here, and then they should be able to install the app using this link. But there's a wait time of, as I said, somewhere between 0 to 48 hours for Apple to review it and be available to your external testers.
Also, Mohan asks, do you recall Google providing this?
Sorry?
Do you recall Google providing this?
Google.
Don't Google. Yeah.
So in Google, it's internal testing, right? And in internal
Yes.
testing, you don't have to do this. In Google, all you need to do is just add their email addresses, and they should be able to test the app through that link itself. It doesn't need to go through the review process. These basically testing groups or areas is limited to the number of testers you can invite on each of them. So for instance, I think on external testing, the limit is 10,000 or 1,000, something along those lines. Same with Google. Internal testing is, I think, limited to 100 users, and then external goes to 1,000. And there are some numbers that you can find out on the stores.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And also, we have questions from Johnny. Johnny, are you ready now?
I'm ready.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I have a couple questions I'm about to bombard you with. My first question was if I wanted to adjust like subscription prices or do like a 30-day trial and then a subscription, how do I do that?
Good question. So basically, with subscriptions, you would need to use, like, what we recommend using is something called RevenueCat. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but that's basically acts as a in between your app and the App Store and your backend. So so that's kind of a requirement. You won't be able to do directly set up subscriptions in Apple and use it in your app. You would require RevenueCat in the Draftbit world. There are other services like IAP that can also be used. And of course, if you want to use it directly through code, I think what RevenueCat said on their website is like it's 40,000 lines of code if you want to just use subscriptions directly. So that's where RevenueCat kind of comes in between and helps. So maybe share your screen and I'll show you where you would do the setup. So there's a setup that would be done on the app Apple Store account for your Apple app, and then that setup goes to, in our case, RevenueCat. And if you're doing an Android side of setup, then you have to do products and subscriptions in Android as well. Let me just see if I've done this here on any of our apps, and I can share my screen and show it to you. I remember doing it somewhere, but I just don't remember the name of the app. But does that make sense to you, what I'm saying?
It does.
Mohan says RevenueCat works for both Android and iOS.
Yes, it works for both Android, iOS, and also works for the web as well if you want to do Stripe subscriptions on the web. So,
Also, just for information, Johnny, we do provide expert services for integrating RevenueCat in your project.
I'm sorry, you provide what?
we provide one-time experts help if you want to implement RevenueCat in your app. The reason being, it requires some code, and the way the RevenueCat is and store policies is like your products won't be displayed in the simulator, so you would need to actually publish your app to TestFlight to see those products. So it's either you can follow the documentation on RevenueCat, which is pretty detailed, but the caveat there is that you won't be able to see it on your simulator. So once you do all of that setup, you basically push it to TestFlight to see your product.
Okay, and that's okay.
So
And then I have another
there,
question, if you got time.
yeah, I think we still have a few minutes left, but I'll just show you how you use subscriptions here.
Okay,
I believe my screen should be visible.
I see it.
Yeah, so the two types of purchases that you can do is in-app purchases, which is like single product-based purchasing, or subscriptions. Usually, like most of the people use subscriptions. So you can come here, create a subscription group. I'll just call it a test group for now. Just so you know, once you create one, you can delete it, but this is just a playground app, so it doesn't really matter. And then I'll start creating subscriptions. I can just say, oops, it locked me out again. But yeah, that's the setup that needs to be done for subscriptions. I don't know if you want to see more of it, but this is probably not going to help you that much because you need to do this for Apple as for Android as well, and then add the number of subscriptions that you want, because there can be different subscriptions, like a monthly subscription, yearly subscription, and so on. So
I'm following you. I think I can take it from there. I just didn't know what to use to do that or how it worked. So
right. And I would strongly recommend looking at the App Store policies to ensure that you actually need an in-app subscription or in-app purchase, or you can use a third-party purchase system. A rule of thumb here is if you're selling anything physical, you can get away with third-party subscriptions or purchase model, which basically saves you from Android and App Store's commissions. So to my knowledge, if you're making less than $1 million a year in revenue, it would be 15% commission that the stores charge. And if you're making more than that, then they would be charging you 30% of your of whoever purchases your subscription as their fee,
yeah, that's a lot. Okay.
right? And yeah, and they are very, very strict on maintaining all of these things. So make sure you go through their policies to understand that you're not breaking something. Because in case you're found in violation, they might close your account.
Okay. And how much is it for you guys to integrate it?
It really depends. I think depending on the number of subscriptions that you have, but we have a starter one-time project for implementing this that starts at $500.
Okay. All right. I think that's all for that.
Do you have any other questions, Johnny?
I have 2 or 3 more. So in my app, I think this was an easy one. In my app, I had a modal with a scroll view, and it won't scroll. It just hits the bounce and pops back up, but won't go down. And it's a scroll view nested inside of another scroll view.
And usually, in the app world, I would say try not nesting scroll views. So what are you displaying on that modal? Is it a list or is it just static content?
Static content.
So with static content, then I think I would just suggest using one scroll view without nesting it, because nesting can be very tedious.
When I tried to just use the scroll view that's on the main part of the page that everything's inside of, it just
Mhm.
it cuts off my content, like it doesn't, like the overflow's hidden or something.
Uh, so now, just so I'm sure, you have a scroll view that's wrapping your app screen, and then you have a modal that also has a scroll view.
That's right. And then I use the variable and the modal up here, and I was hoping you could scroll down in the modal to show the static content. And when I get rid of the scroll view on the modal, it won't show the overflow and just cuts it off, and it won't allow you to scroll. And then when I put the scroll view, it won't scroll either. It just bounces back up.
Um, I'm not sure what Rahul thinks, but if you're comfortable with sharing it, your screen publicly, you can just show it here. Just send us the link and we can share and take a look. If this is something that we can troubleshoot like in 5 minutes or so, as this
I am at
session is kind of a, okay.
I'm at work. So, yeah, I don't have access to it.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Yeah, I
okay.
think there's no one else here anyways now. So, but yeah, if you can just reach out via support, we should be able to help you just looking at the screen, because it's very hard to troubleshoot without looking at the actual implementation.
Okay, and then I don't know if you can give me direction on this part. I think I had asked, and you were getting around to helping me. But for my search fields, I did a fetch as a post for a bunch of parameters, and I broke it down to like the first name and the last name and address and stuff like that. And I want it to like display the list at all times, but
Mhm.
when somebody types in a first name, then it only displays those with that first name. And then when they type in the last name, it shows a list of the person with the first and last name. Does that make sense? Without them having to click the button to repopulate or search. Is that possible?
It is possible, and you're saying, do you have multiple fields that you want to search with, or is it just going to be always the first name and the last name? And are those fields separate in your database? So like you have a different row or column for first name and a different column for your last name?
Yeah, I have multiple fields from address to city, state, first name, last name. They're all separate columns in the database, and they're all separate inputs in my um, API endpoint. And I want it to kind of change the list as the inputs are filled out, and then only populate the people, for instance, with that first name, that last name, and that address. Um, so I don't know how to.
Interesting. Um, there's actually a few ways about going about doing this. And how long is that list for? Just as a reference.
Well, that was the other thing is I was trying to do a limit of like 10, and then could just do C more and C 10 more, but I can't get the limit to work either. So it's just infinitely long right now. But I only have like 4 customers or whatever in
Mhm.
the base database. So right now it's 4.
4. Okay. I mean, the reason I was asking you is like we can do front end filtering, which is going to be pretty straightforward, and we won't, hit too many API endpoints. But if it's going to be a list that can be, say, 1,000 people, then I would recommend using the backend filtering that you're trying to do at the moment. This would basically involve, the you send the search field back to your database, right? And
Okay.
then what are you using? Are you using
Dano.
as a Xano? Okay. So in Xano, then what you would do is basically you would search through these various columns. Say, for instance, you would go in and you would do, hey, does the first name include whatever the search term is? If it does, it will, get that result back. If the last name includes that field, it will get, it will try to filter out those things. And then the data that's going to come back to you would be the data that you would be displaying on your screen. So this would, um, this can be done again, and most of the things can be done multiple ways, right? So you can either have that get endpoint that's getting everything and pass the search parameter as a query param to it, or you can have a separate endpoint which basically just takes that search parameter and searches through your list. And when someone is typing in there, you would hide the original list and show the other list that's coming from this search endpoint on your screen. So that would kind of show people as they type whatever data that they're getting back from Xano according to your filtration.
So do I need to change it from a post input to or endpoint to a get? That the Xano
Uh,
I use a post because I had so many parameters.
yeah, you can send it as a post endpoint as well. So here, I think this I can probably show you very, very quickly.
And then I guess my last part of that question is if I'm doing a post, how do I make it just initiate the API call or whatever after they're done
Yeah,
typing?
yeah. So, and sorry, Miss, I don't know if you have more time, but this would take me like 5-10 minutes to just showcase here. So,
Yeah, that's fine.
so we have a text input field here, like this. And now because you're making a post request, I think now fetch basically takes post as well. So you can directly add a fetch component on your screen. Um,
Okay,
and
I have that.
right. And then now what's happening is I think you will have two separate fetches on your screen then. One would be the get fetch and the other one would be the post fetch, right? So as soon as someone starts typing in this field, for instance, and I think you should use this one, which is on change text delayed. This basically acts as debouncing because you don't want to people sometimes type very, very fast, and if they're typed in like 6 words, that means 6 API calls have been fired. And
Okay.
sometimes they get fired before the last API result got in. So usually at least what I do when I'm doing this is I don't fire off any call till there are at least 3 letters in the field. That can also be done, but depending on your use case, it's totally up to you.
I did it
So,
well.
sorry?
I did it that way as well. I followed a video you guys had for the most part.
Oh, cool. Then basically, then the only thing that you're probably getting at is how would you display it? I would basically just hide your get one and then uh, show your post call fetch instead. And the very, very best way of doing it would be if you want to reduce the amount of work that you do here in Draftbit, is just use that get and overload it. So basically send your query parameters there or just use the post call as the default list because when you are defaulting and there's no search parameter, it should return the entire list, right?
That's right.
And then once you start typing in stuff, that's when it's going to return a filtered list, which would automatically kind of, then you don't need a get endpoint or a post endpoint. You can just work with one endpoint and one fetch component on your screen, and it will just return whatever data Xano is returning back based on your search query.
So my issue is though when I type in and sorry for going over time. Thank you guys so much. And when I type in the parameter or whatever, the first name or anything, it doesn't do the post call unless I push a button or something. Like it won't just automatically do it. So surely I don't want an API call on all the text change text delay or something. So what's the best way to do that?
Oh, it should fire an API call when you do on change text delayed. So this basically what this would do is just to show you like a console log maybe.
Do I have to actually put the API call on or I just put it on the fetch?
Oh, that's a valid question. So yes. So if you are passing and like it's harder to display it. So if you're passing your text input field as a parameter, uh, then it would. Interesting.
That's where
No, it should. So basically, how would I say this? Maybe I can do a very, very quick one.
sorry, Rumeysa.
Oh, yeah, I think Rumeysa, if
That's
you
all
want to.
fine.
Okay.
No, all fine.
This has had me
So
kind of for like 2 weeks, and so I'm really excited to hear.
oh, and I'm definitely more inclined to help you and get this done. So right now I'm passing a query parameter limit, which is 5, and I've made it into a variable. So now what I want to do here is on my fetch component, and just to show, let's just delete this, let's hide this, fetch, and then we do a list, and then let's just do text. We'll just put in the person. Now you can see there's 5 people here, and my fetch, the query parameter, I'm gonna move that to my text input value, and it's gonna show nothing or everything because right now it's empty. So if I just go here, right now because the text input field is empty, it's showing everything. Now if I put in 2 here, see it updated this fetch endpoint because we changed the query parameter.
Okay, now if I had multiple text inputs, how do I just have to have multiple query parameters?
So yeah, so in your search, do you have like separate fields for first name and then last name and then
That's
something like that?
yeah, I have a text input for each one. And I want it to somehow take each one and apply it to a parameter if it has a value.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you can do that. It's not the most efficient way. Usually an efficient way here would be just have one text input,
Mm-hmm.
let them type in whatever they want to type in, take that input and then test it against your different columns in your backend instead of having a separate text input for every column. So that's when I was saying originally is like you'll go in and you'll check your first name field. If that exists, you filter based on that. If it's not in the first name field, the first name column, then you look at the last name column and see if it's in there. Then you filter out that and so on. So instead of having multiple fields, just have one. Or if you feel like so it really depends on, what you're trying to build. If you feel like, having multiple text inputs is something that would be more useful in your use case, you can still use it. It's just not, I would say, efficient. Or what you can also do is you can have like a picker here or something, which would basically, that will make your life easier in terms of designing the endpoint. It's just have one input field and let user select here or you can have like, what you say, radio buttons, and you can say, hey, search first name, search by last name, search by, whatever you want to put in there. And then,
Yeah, like filtering, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So that way, at least you will be reduced with the text input field, and then the user will have the option of what they're filtering through. And then in the back end, that would be easier for you as well, right? If you send two query parameters, one would be the name of the field that they are searching and the actual search term.
I think this one, this suggestion would be more user friendly, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, this suggestion would be both user friendly and developer friendly. Although, like, the user friendly one would be just entering anything in there and it just magically knows what it needs to filter through.
Okay. That'll work.
But yeah, and it's not that straightforward. Like, if it was everything on the front end, then it would have been a
Easy.
simple. Yeah, I mean, not easier. Yes.
Okay. That's it then. I'm out of time. So
All right.
thanks, guys.
Thank you, Johnny,
Yeah.
for
Thanks,
both
Johnny.
attending and for your questions. Please
Yeah.
keep attending our webinars and keep asking your questions.
Okay. Will you still look into my other thing that I had asked you about earlier?
Yes, on intercom, right?
Yes.
Yes, I'll be checking that.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Rumeysa.
Thank you, Rahul,
Bye bye.
for guiding us. Bye.